Now
Yeah.
we're live. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another weekly event of the Modern Dad Council. I am your guest host, Tommy Maloney with Blending the Family, and we have on our show two wonderful dads, Eric Lehman of the Game Changers and Thomas Pfeiffer of the Good Men Project, and I am super excited. As they would say in the news, Chris Eischen is on assignment in San Francisco. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming onto the show today. I am super pumped, super excited to be. I would like to say I'm sitting in the guest host, but I'm actually sitting in my own chair, so that's kind of cool. Um, Motivation is what our topic is today. We're going to talk about not only motivating our kids, but maybe motivating our own selves through our kids. First question I want to start off with is, and we were kind of talking about this before we went on the air, is in like I said, gentlemen, I am not a political person, but this is huge in the news, is what's going on in Baltimore, including Baltimore and the Chicago White Sox playing to a crowd of zero. And for me, being a Cub fan, I'm all for that. But one of the things that was big in the news this week is the looting, and one of the looters was getting slapped by his mom. And since we're talking about motivation, one of the things I was thinking of, we have two sets of motivation. One, the kid who's motivating to get something for free, and then mom, her motivation is for her son not to be, um, you know, behind bars or going down the wrong path. So Eric, I want to start with you, and as a dad, and again with motivation, where do you kind of fit the word of motivation with your kids?
Well, I feel like motivation is yet another one of those words that we get to redefine. And what I mean by that is that I want to live by model. I want to show my kids that I'm committed to living into my dream. I want them to know that there's totally space for their dreams, and that those dreams can coexist, and that you don't need to go into daddy's business in order to feel motivated, or welcome or accepted. Um, on the flip side, I feel like my earlier parenting was all about almost like motivating them so that they could live vicariously, or so that I could live vicariously through them. And I wanted my kids to do well in school, so I could say that I had a kid who did well in school. Um, and I'm so different than that now, and I'm just more about, and that's why I'm so ecstatic to be in friendship with Dan, one of our former guests, because I want my kids to develop their own character, not to become mini me's. So I think this is where our modeling gets to change the most, because I think we're also used to reproducing this model of, motivating our kids by our praise, and having that being the reinforcer for them to be better or more. And it's a challenge, because the hardest thing to do is to hang back and to not necessarily intervene, and to just let our kids become themselves. So I don't know if I'm the anti-motivation guy now. It's just a very interesting time, because I think it's a great question, for this day and age. And I was watching that clip of that mother in Baltimore, and I mean, she still hit him.
Yeah.
Like, I think we have very interesting models in the mainstream media, and a lot of people are praising her, saying she was this, model parent. And I'm like, she's still motivated by fear rather than love. So I feel like what I know that I'm here to do is to motivate through love as best as I possibly can, and choose love over fear any day of the week. So
And Thomas,
yeah.
Thomas, your thoughts on this?
Well, my thoughts on that mother are that it's a complex situation because there's a long history of violence and physical violence in her culture, in the culture that she grew up in, going all the way back to slave culture. And so you have to look at the roots of that. And she thought that she was protecting her child. She didn't want her kid to end up like Freddie Gray. She didn't want her kid to be arrested and injured or killed and all of these horrible things that happen. That was the only way she knew. That was the only thing in her toolbox that she could access to protect her kid. So if you talk about her motivation is protective as a mother, but she doesn't have really the privilege of other tools to motivate her child, because she culturally, and not just her culture, but the culture that is reinforced on her. It's hard for her to choose anything else. So there's an amazing Washington Post article about that, saying that we should not celebrate her violence in any way, but we should understand where it comes from, and the roots of it. But getting into motivation, to me, the word motivation, it's about motives, which is why you do something, but it also has that implication of somebody is motivated, somebody's purposeful, somebody's out there, they're moving forward, they're doing stuff, that you're motivated to act in some way. And I think getting to our kids, if we want them to be motivated, we have to let them be themselves. They're not going to want to do something that is not true to who they are. So yes, we have to get them through school. Yes, they have to learn their basic math. Yes, they have to do some basic stuff as kids that nobody probably really wants to do. And so we have to help them with that. But beyond that basic framework, we want to help them step into their motivation. We want to help them step into what they care about, and what their passions are. And I may have said this on a previous show, but I remember the moment when my older son, who's now 12, was 6 months old, and I'd been changing his diapers and cleaning him up and feeding him, and putting him over the shoulder and burping and doing all the things. It becomes very mechanical with infants. And I looked at his face, and I said, "This is a person. This is not just a machine where stuff goes in and stuff comes out and you have to take care of these basic needs. This is an individual person, and he is going to be different from anybody else in the world, and my job is to let him be that person, not to control him, not to contain him. Yes, I want to give him the best of me, but I really want him to grow up to be the best of him."
Well, and let me just piggyback on that too, Thomas, and for both of you, again, coming from, the parenting point of view, and, especially, again, as dads, we want our kids to grow up, and we do. We want them, we want them to be the A students. We want them to be the jocks on the team. We want, all of this upper echelon for them, but in reality, my son, his goal in life is he wants to be a professional hockey player, and if that kid doesn't have a growth spurt, yeah, he's not going to. And I have no problem with his motivation of wanting to be, a professional athlete, but in realistic terms, I know he's not going to be that. So I'll go to you, Eric, but my question is, how do we motivate our kids when they don't have realistic goals?
Mm. Well, I think the non-interventional way is is to find patience and to model us living into our own goals. Yeah, these are really great questions because they challenge my inner core. You know,
I'm sorry.
No,
I
it's
I love
uncomfortable.
it.
Really hard.
I was, the first half of my life, I was all about goals, and I think I said this once, in a recording with Jay, is that I spent the first 40 years of my life answering questions, and now I'm going to spend the next 40 questioning all of my answers, and I feel like there's no bigger question to re-answer or to re-question, or no bigger answer to re-question than parenthood, because I think it's the best job out there, and I think it's the most important job out there. That being said, there's no one way to do it, and there's no one child model to do it to or with.
And that's true,
So
Eric. And
yeah,
I think that's where, me personally, my biggest struggle as a dad is, trying to be perfect, because unfortunately my competition is my former wife. And when I hear things back from my son's school, from the teacher saying, what a great kid, he turns in his homework, and for me, I just turn around and say, It's not me, it's her, because she's the one there, you know, helping him with his homework. She's the one there, feeding him, and she's the one there, essentially raising him. But as a dad, my biggest struggle is, am I doing it right? Just like you were saying, Eric, for the first, half of their lives, approximately 18, 20, 21 years old, we're going to be doing our parenting, but after that, they're going to be, making their own choices, making their own decisions. I mean, the thing with you, Thomas, you know, uh, especially as as the editor of Good Men Project, I mean, I'm sure you see a lot of articles coming across your desk about dads who struggle, and dads who um, think they're doing it
Absolutely.
right or think they're doing it wrong.
Absolutely. There is no one way to do it, but we all have pretty good instincts, and even if we've grown up in dysfunctional environments, a lot of us are aware of what that dysfunction was, and we don't want to repeat it. So, getting into your natural dad instinct is good and it's healthy. It's when we start the negative self-talk, when we start to be so self-critical and we second guess, should I be doing this? Am I doing this right or wrong? And then if you have an ex or somebody who, you know, might be slamming you or is comparing, or there's some of that going on, it's really really tough. But you know, the only arbiter of whether you're doing a good job is your kid. Is how your kid is reacting with you and responding to you and relating to you. So if that relationship is good and your kid is happy and there's love flowing back and forth, then you're doing a good job. And if you're taking the time and you're being present, um, that's that's all that they want. That's all that they hope for and expect from you. I mean, perfection is just, it's impossible. I asked my son the other day, because I was having one of those moments of questioning, and he gets to school late. He doesn't do his homework all the time, and all this stuff that and I said, look, it's me. Like I didn't get up early enough, or whatever it is. And I said to him, am I doing a good enough job? I just asked him. He's 12. He said to me, would I have come this far if you weren't? And
Ooh,
that just like heart
yeah.
melt. I mean, so that's where you have to get the value. It's not from the outside world. It's not from some other dad or whatever. But I also want to address, Tommy, your question about a child sets an unrealistic goal
Mhm.
that just probably isn't going to happen. And I've had this with my son too, because he has a very rich sort of fantasy world. Even now, I mean, it started with images and video games, and he still draws dragons and warriors and all sorts of stuff. So I did a lot of work with him on understanding fantasy versus reality. But I would say if your kid has a goal that like they're just not gonna achieve, he wants to play basketball and he's 5'2", or whatever it is. I mean, let him discover that for himself. Don't tell him he can't, but put examples in front of him of the people who are doing it, and let him see what those people have and how they've gone about it and what the training is and all that. And eventually he's going to figure it out. He's going to say, you know what, I'm not built for this, I'm not meant for this. And that's when you have to help him find another dream. That's when you have to, Jay talks about those doors that you keep open, and that it's okay for a lot of doors to close, and that we're sometimes bewildered with all of these options. That's when we have to step in and say, well, okay, this door is shut, but that's okay because you've got all these other things that you can do.
And I just want to send a shout out to Jay Forty, who is getting married this weekend. We are so happy for him. And one of our good friends, Larry, is going to be sipping coffee with him. Jealous? Yes. Now, Eric, I want to ask, because this was one of the questions I've been, popping in my head, is that, I don't want to use the economy as a crutch on this, but, as parents, we want our kids to, follow, the most popular path, which is, you go to high school, you go to college, you go out and get a good job. Let me ask you this first, Eric, is that what if your kid said to you, Dad, I don't want to go to college? Is that a motivation that we as parents have instilled in their heads, or is it something that, like Thomas, you're saying, is that we need to let our kids, follow their own path?
Well, I've been questioning why college for a really long time, and I don't think it's just from a financial perspective on my end. So if any of my kids said, Daddy, this isn't for me, I would fully hear them and honor and respect their decision, because I'm now, looking at all my idols in the world, and they've either dropped out of college, never went to college in the first place, or, totally didn't learn a thing that they later applied from their college years. So, one of the models that I'm listening to more frequently is Tony Hsieh, the CEO of Zappos, and one of his pieces of advice is take the money you would have invested in your kids' college years and help them start their own business, help create an entrepreneur rather than a student. And he feels, and I'm starting to agree, that the world would be a better place. And so if there's any motivation I give my kids, it's to walk to the beat of their own drum. And I feel like that's one of the reasons that I created something called the Game Changer movement, is that it's not just about violent video games. It's about changing our game on so many things and changing the lenses through which we look at each of these games. Whether it's the virtual world gaming itself or how we live our lives. So I feel like I really embrace all these things, and I just want to get back to the question of what happens when goals they don't necessarily meet our sense of what is achievable, and so like I'm probably rephrasing it poorly, but in the professional hockey player example, what your son's really saying is, this is what I'm passionate about, Dad, and I want your support. I may come to the realization, and I'm remembering the movie Little Miss Sunshine, when the kid who wouldn't talk, realized that he didn't have good enough vision to become a pilot or something. There's some moment where it was just crystal clear that because of some genetic thing, he wasn't going to be able to live into the global dream that he was carrying with him since early on. It was a really awful moment, and it was also a freeing moment. At some point he just said, well, I guess I'll figure out something else. um, and so our job is just to support our kids' beliefs and passions, and let them find their own limits. I mean, I believe deeply in the laws of attraction, and that, Muggsy Bogues is not the tallest basketball player out there, but I've seen him dunk. So like there are things that can happen with when passion meets opportunity. Our job is just to introduce our kids to the opportunity for them to find themselves, and to love them through it. So he might become a sportscaster. He might there might be a pathway for him to realize as much of that dream as physically possible, and there's always the Muggsy Bogues story. No matter what. So there are always people from the statistical anomalies that say, I'm doing this, and they do it.
And Thomas, I know you're going to have to leave us soon, so your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, my thought on that would be a lot of what Eric said. Present the opportunities to your children. I think that if my son said, I don't want to go to college, that's okay. My question to him is, what is your plan?
Right.
I mean, college is one plan. It's one track. It's not the track. But you have to have some sort of plan for how you want to move forward in your life. What is your plan to get the skills that you need and build the framework you need to become an independent person in the world? So if it's not college, that's fine. But then let's work together and let's find another path that works for you.
And again, I know you're short on time today, Thomas. First of all, thank you for showing up today. And I know you have a new ebook out, and I want you to just let the world know.
I do, thanks. I actually have two. The first one is called Why It Can't Work: Detaching from Dysfunctional Relationships to Make Room for True Love. And the second one is called What is Love? A Guide for the Perplexed to Matters of the Heart. And they're both available on Amazon.
And you have an offer, though. You have a special offer.
I do have a special offer. If you buy both books together, I can offer a free half-hour relationship evaluation session. So contact me for the details on that. Thanks.
Website for you, Thomas?
Website, Tomaplom. Tomaplom.blogspot.com is the blog.
Perfect. Thanks again, Thomas. Good luck with the books.
All right.
Always excited when fellow dads have a new book out or a product out. So we will talk to you again next week, Thomas.
All
Eric,
right.
don't go away.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Thomas. All right, Eric. So you and I, one thing I really want to talk about, because it's in your wheelhouse, and motivation. I mean, here's the thing. For example, I don't know how many dads out there who are in my situation, every other weekend dad. And so one of the things I'd rather be doing with my son is doing stuff versus the world of video games. And so there's often times when I talk to my son Connor that I'm on the phone with him, and he's probably the only game he'll play these days is one of the NHL games. And and here's the thing about it, though, and I've learned from listening to him about when he does play the games, it's not just about the game, but it's about other things. He can make trades. He can create teams. And in your opinion, Eric, when we have the ability with video games, that even though hockey is a violent sport, and even though the game is somewhat violent, is it okay for kids to play a game, but at the same time, I just feel like they're learning something. They're learning about. I want to say there's math involved because again with trades you have to have certain, I don't know, certain points or levels and things like that. But in your world, Eric, what's your thought about number one? Can video games actually be good? And the other thing is, um, we don't have video games in our house, and in his mom's house, they do. So those are a couple questions for you because again, you are our video game expert.
Well, and I feel like again it's another redefinition thing. Like, I left the gaming world when it was all about Defender, Stargate, and Pac-Man. And one of the reasons I left that world is that I saw my addictive behavior even with those games. There's a new animal in these games nowadays, and I think it's brilliant, and I don't have any true value judgment around it per se, because there's no right and wrong in my book. There's just more or less nourishing, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And so I think this is a great question, Tommy, and thank you so much for asking it, because one of the things that I learn more and more about the current games is that they do something almost invisibly well that you were starting to bring out, is like making trades and doing all these things. What that really does is that it gives each player a level of significance that is hard to attain in our so-called normal lives. And it's this significance that becomes addictive, and we don't really have a full grasp of that. So what the game changer movement is really trying to do is celebrate all the other ways that kids can be significant in their own worlds without playing violent video games. And notice I say violent video games because gamification is brilliant. There are so many awesome ways to apply gamification to the business world, to all these other things, because I think, just knowing the parameters, knowing the rules of the game, knowing all these different variables, that's brilliant. And I'm not gonna poo-poo that. I'm not gonna, for lack of a better expression, throw out the baby with the bathwater. There is something brilliant about this technology. And I was witnessing someone playing Grand Theft Auto, and I was just like, wow, what a brilliant way of creating a sense of significance. The sad part is what's the missed opportunity? I mean, it's so easy to make someone feel significant with an act of violence. How do we recreate significance with love? I mean, and I think that's what I want to spend the rest of my life investigating and figuring out and kind of finding and replacing. So, when faced with your son who's playing this game, if it's raining out, or if it's unsafe to go outside, or if it's midnight, there are lots of different experiences where that game is probably the right thing to be doing at that time, if that makes sense.
Well, let me play devil's advocate for you
Sure,
on this one.
sure.
And that is, Eric, this past week, I want to say ESPN was covering it. There was this like huge college gaming event, and somebody was joking that I don't know if it was Arizona or Arizona State won it, and they were kidding about it because what else are you going to do in Arizona? I don't know. But if our kids came to us, Eric, and said, I want to be a professional gamer. I want to, and I wouldn't even say design games because that's, in my opinion, two separate things. But if our kids came to us, Eric, and said, I want to be a professional gamer, back onto the topic of motivation, I would say to my son, are you nuts? What's the motivation there? I mean, you're sitting on your butt, you're doing whatever they. I mean, I don't play. I mean, I quit playing right after uh, Atari. I mean, my first Atari with the cartridges, and you put that. I'd rather be, doing something. And so when I hear, not only that, but there are professional gamers, Eric, that are
Mhm.
making, not, I mean, not all of them, but some are making some good money.
Mhm.
How in the wide world of sports do you say to your kid, that's a great job, go for it, without turning around and pounding your head in the wall going, what are they thinking?
I guess the simple answer is you just do, because I think part of being a present dad is getting old talk tracks out and infusing new talk tracks in, and so and it's hard, I mean, one of the things that I struggle with right now, and it's not on the gaming path, but my kids are engaged in dance competition,
Mhm.
and I love the dance part. I can't stand the competition part.
Yeah.
So I go to their recitals when the energy is not about, oh, I hope the other team trips, during their routine so that we can, win and, get the ultra platinum, multi gold, big trophies, all I want my kids to come out with after their dance experience with this current studio is to still love dance. Um, and much like when my kids' teachers ask me what I want them to experience in the given school year, I just want them to stay curious. So I might be I might be wrong. I don't know if there is a right or wrong, but if any of my kids, and that could be a cosmic challenge for me, I mean, and maybe it's going to happen, maybe my son will say, Daddy, I want to be a gamer. I want, and I mean, here's the deal. Like in my world, I met this one of the first gaming scholarship recipients of all time. I met him in March at the sponsorship conference, and he was wearing like sponsored gear from head to toe. So he's gonna be okay. Like he's gonna be financially fine.
Yeah, but
This
that's
guy
not,
know how to
that's
make eye
not the
contact?
majority.
Huh?
As you know, Eric, that's not the majority. I mean,
But I mean,
there.
like that's the okay. So like, and this is a great question, or a great line or thread, because much like your son saying, I want to be a professional hockey player, if we squash that dream prematurely,
Mhm.
then we're not living into our job as parents. And trust me, I've been on all sides of wrong, on this thing. Um, it's just that I'm no longer gonna, one of these, like the I was an artist as a kid. I drew so many hours of so many days, so many nights, um, and someone once said, "How are you gonna make money doing that?" Or someone told me, when I was diving into more abstract art that wasn't in my artistic wheelhouse yet, like someone said, that's way below your other standard, of other work. And I was just like, and I internalized it, and I stopped drawing for years. Why? Because of all these ridiculous questions that were not at all, really what I was asking. All I wanted at that moment was encouragement. I didn't want someone to say even that my art was good. I just wanted someone to say, you should do what feels right for you to do, um,
So
and
you're
have
listening, it
faith.
sounds like, Eric, you're listening to your negative self-talk.
Well, I mean, back then, yeah.
Yeah.
And, so that's where I'm like a pig in poop, right now, because, I get to live into the game changer movement. I get to do art in community, you know, cutting into pieces violent video games. So transforming violence into art is what I get to do, to create my living. And I think this is perfect timing, because I just I took on this YouTube from a woman named Lynn Twist, who wrote this book called The Soul of Money. And she said that we can do three things with regard to our careers. She said we can either make a killing, a dying, or a living. And I don't know if I shared this with you in personal conversation, but it blew me away, because it had me look back on my earlier career. And, you know, when I was a pharmaceutical representative, I was either making a killing or a dying or both. And what I mean by that is making a killing means you make a lot of money, but in order to make that money, you are willing to sacrifice the earth or other people in order to make that money. When you make a dying, you're willing to sacrifice the true passions, the true, you know, mission that everyone on this planet was born with, in order to trade a unit of your time for a unit of money, so that you can, you know, feed your family. And each day you do that, you're dying. Or that's what Lynn Twist says. And then she says, and like the energy totally shifts, or you can make a living. And she said you can live into the purpose, into the passion that you were born with, and joyfully command your livelihood from that place. So that's why I am happier than a clam right now, because as the Game Changer movement unfolds, I know that I'm going to be making art, you know, transforming violence into art for as long as this spirit is inside me. And I get to model that to my kids while they're still, you know, with me. So that part is really good. So you're right. I mean, so the statistics are, you know, the same, really, you know, for someone who wants to be a professional hockey player, or someone who wants to be an artist or a professional gamer, you know. So like, if you really look at it, the creme de la cremes, like the people who become the CEOs, you know, that's rarefied air. And how do we get our kids believing that they deserve that rarefied air? That's our job, you know. And I feel like that's where we got to get out of our own negative self-talk that we heard as kids, and then we got to breathe, you know, put all of our judgments aside and say, kid, I believe in you, you know, not because you're made of my blood, because, you know, I believe deeply in adoption too, but because you are born to live out your dream, and I don't want to get in your way. So, well, you know, how do we do that on a daily basis? That's a big question.
Well, two things that come to mind after listening to you talk about those three, you know, important points. The first thing is, these past couple Wednesdays, I've gone to my son's school and had lunch with him, because I'm as a IT contractor, I'm not working these next few weeks, so I'm taking, you know, advantage of this. And so this past Wednesday, you know, you're talking about, you know, dying. I walked out of the school after sitting down having lunch with him, and then we played at recess, and I love it. I love just hanging out with all the other kids and just being goofy. And so I walked out of the school, and I honestly, I started to cry, because I love those moments, and I don't always get those moments. And, you know, I'm not, as you were saying, I'm personally not living, I'm personally dying, because I'm making the sacrifice of my job for my family. And then the other thing you're talking about is, even if the kids are not our blood, is, you know, I've got two bonus girls, and one of them is graduating just here in a few weeks. And, you know, it's awesome to see the growth and her motivation, because she is one of those straight A student kids who, you know, I'm just so proud of her. And, you know, kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier with the whole mom, you know, slapping her kid in Baltimore. I know for a fact that would never happen in our household. I know that with any of our kids. But the thing is, I envy them, and I really do. And what I mean by that, Eric, is that their motivation has nothing. I mean, honestly, has nothing to do with me. It's all self motivation. It's all they. I don't see a lot of negative self talk. For example, Betsy on Wednesday had to give her thesis presentation, and then unfortunately I couldn't make it. But I was asking her mom. I said, "How did it go?" And she said, as you know, we've talked offline about being part of the National Speakers Association, and one of the first things my wife said was she didn't have any ums or ohs, but she was using so's a lot. I'm like, I need to get her into my Toastmaster meeting occasionally. But back to your original points is that, we as dads, we as parents, I think we're not living enough. I think we're dying too much. And we are, it's like that old saying where you're sitting at work wishing you were home with your family, and you're back home going, gosh, I wish I was at work. It's a no, it is not a no-win situation.
Mm-hmm.
You can control it. I mean, just like, to your movement, we can control those video games. We can control, how long those kids should be or are playing on them. Let me ask you this, Eric. What advice? All right, so what advice do you have for other dads who are in similar situations where they necessarily can't control the time their kids are playing on video games, but what about, would you suggest or recommend different games that these kids can play?
Well, I feel like you're on the right track. I mean, violence is not just there's no category, when I watch my kids blow up things in Harry Potter Lego, I say, why? Why do we have to blow up things in Harry Potter Lego? Like, where was that in the movie? So, and I guess what I mean by that is, like, for some reason, a lot of the game companies are infusing violence unnecessarily, thinking that that's why it sells. That being said, what is possible? Where's the possibility? Is and this is, maybe it was a perfect segue to the Game Changer Pledge or the Game Changer Challenge, which is I want to challenge parents to spend 2 more hours with their kids doing something other than playing violent video games, and sharing that on the Game Changer Facebook page, and maybe even videoing some of those moments. So yeah, I mean, I think the sporting games are brilliant. Like, making trades are brilliant. Do I think that should be something that kids do 8 hours a night, sacrificing sleep so that they show up like part of the zombie apocalypse during the day at school? No. On the flip side, they're going to do that a few times, and they're going to realize the error of their ways. The challenge is, as soon as we say no and we try to intervene, then it's going to become a battle between father and son, father and daughter, rather than them coming up with their own, like, consequence to action, understanding. So instead of them saying, wow, I played this game 4 nights in a row until 4 in the morning, and I failed 3 tests, and I showed up, like, not at all for school on Friday. Maybe I don't want to do that. When we intervene too soon, then all of a sudden we're like, now we're embroiled in a battle of wills, and kids trying to prove themselves to, like, no, I'm gonna stay up 5 in the morning, and I'm gonna show daddy that I can do this. I can do both my video games and this. But what if that self-actualization, that self-knowledge, was just a week away, and they could get it themselves? So like I think this is the biggest challenge as parents nowadays is knowing when not to intervene, because we're so used to being helicopter parents. We're so used to putting all these different boundaries and restrictions on our kids. um, I listen a lot to Wayne Dyer, and he speaks about how yeah, and he puts candy out like in plentiful supply so that it doesn't become scarce. Like there's no feeling of scarcity, there's no charge to it. And then he notices when his kids' friends come over. He's got 8 kids,
Yeah.
and his kids' friends come over and see candy like just out in the open, for everyday consumption. The kids go bonkers, and they whenever they have visitors is when they actually need to replenish the candy supply. But their kids having it constantly available realize that there's no longer a charge to it. There's no longer a this is something that was made scarce or for a special occasion. I can have candy whenever I want, I just don't choose it.
Right.
So how do we teach our kids, or how do we let go of all of the judgment that we're internalizing, to let kids make their own decisions? I mean, I've grown up hearing stories of people who got caught smoking cigarettes, and I love the stories where parents go the other way or uncles go the other way. And so my mentor was caught smoking cigarettes, and the day he quit was the day his uncle caught him smoking cigarettes and made him smoke the rest of the pack right then and there. And you'll probably never smoke a cigarette again if you're forced to smoke that many in a row that quickly, because you'll know what it does to your body. You'll know that you don't want to ever feel that way again. So I mean, I think that's an extreme way of parenting, and I don't think we'd get away with it in this age. I think Child Protective would get involved in some regard. But that being said, non-intervention is a new parenting style, and I don't earn many points for non-intervention. But that being said, my kids go up to most adults and know how to strike up a conversation because they don't have too many things in the way. So I feel deeply that it's time to intervene less. I mean, and I think that's why Game Changer movement is not about lobbying, policy and getting our government to intervene and tell the people producing these games to enforce the the ratings board codes even more stringently. I'm saying, hey kids, there's another life. Choose it. Here's an opportunity to choose something different and beautiful, and it's coming at you from love, and here's an option. It's not saying you're a bad kid. It's saying there's another choice. So I mean, your son sounds awesome, and you know what I mean. What?
I love him to death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, and the kids that we love the most, we want the best for. And some of the challenges, knowing that not all the time are we going to be the best messenger for that. In fact, I've learned more recently that I'm sometimes the worst messenger. So I'd rather experience be the teacher than me being the messenger. And that's the hardest thing to do as a dad. And if I could write a book on what it takes to do that, I would, but I just don't have the time right now, or I haven't created the time right now.
Well, we have a few minutes left, Eric, and I want to give you an opportunity as well, like we gave Mr. Thomas Pfeiffer from the Good Men Project. What do you have coming up? Do you have anything out there that we want to share to our other dads, or even the moms that are listening and watching this? And also, where on the World Wide Web can they find you, Eric?
Sure. Well, right now everything is starting to get listed or celebrated under the Dream Catalyst website. So it's www.dream-catalyst.org. We're about to launch an Indiegogo campaign that is excited to do that challenge, to challenge parents to spend 2 more hours each week with their kids. And we're also going to do something along the lines of the Ice Bucket Challenge, where we want people to commit to spending 2 more hours per week with their kids, and record it on video, and then challenge 3 other parents to do the same thing while donating $10 to the Game Changer movement. We believe that we can remove one violent video game from circulation for every dollar that's donated. And our global vision is to have 1 million violent video games at least traded in and transformed into art, signs, and furniture. So that's what's coming down the pipe, but all of that will be referenceable or celebrated on the dream-catalyst.org website.
Perfect. I want to say thank you, Eric. I want to also say again, thank you to Thomas Pfeiffer from the Good Men Project for hanging with us. Congratulations again to J40. Thank you, Chris Eischen, for letting me hang, and hopefully I didn't screw up the show too bad.
No, I think it was great.
It was a lot of fun. And for those of you that are watching this, I am going to say, go Blackhawks. I got my playoff beard ready to go. And Eric, this has been a blast, and I look forward to seeing you again next Friday, same time, same bat channel.
Yeah, thank you so much. Look forward to it as well.
And for me, anybody listening and watching, go to our website, which is blendingthefamily.com, blendingthefamily.com, which is where we talk about how you take 2 families with kids after divorce or separation, and now you're going to morph them under one roof. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Oh my gosh, this is going to be I'm gonna talk like a guy real quick, Eric. There's so much in the sporting world, but again, for me, go Blackhawks. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you. I'm glad we got the priorities taken care of.
Yeah.